All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to unpack something that is absolutely crucial, yet somehow it's constantly overlooked in enterprise architecture. We're talking about the strategic lifespan of our data. We're going to look at the highly structured journey information takes throughout its entire existence, literally from the second it's generated all the way down to its final erasure. It's a journey you absolutely have to understand if your organization is scaling up, and we're going to break down the nuts and bolts of it so we can actually manage it effectively. So, to kick things off, let's start with a really fundamental question. Does data live forever? Just think about your own organization's habits for a second. We deploy an app, we generate terabytes of user logs, push them to the cloud, and, well, we just kind of assume they're going to sit there safely in the digital ether for eternity, right? We treat our enterprise data stores like they're these permanent, static fixtures. But we really need to take a step back here. What actually happens to that data once it's out there? How do businesses strategically handle the millions of data points they generate every single day? The reality is, it takes a way more dynamic approach than just spinning up a database and forgetting about it. To answer that, we're pulling from foundational frameworks, specifically an excerpt from a BCS course text. What's great about this is it strips away all that complex IT jargon and gives us a crystal clear baseline for how organizations actually need to view their information. Instead of getting bogged down in, complicated algorithms or crazy storage architectures right out of the gate, this text offers a real shift in perspective. It gives us a straightforward philosophy on data management that's going to act as our roadmap as we explore the true nature of information in a growing enterprise. The anchor for all of this is one core concept, the information lifecycle, or as it's often called, the data lifecycle. At its heart, this is simply a framework outlining the distinct stages data goes through, from the very moment of its initial creation all the way to its deletion. For those of us in the trenches dealing with data governance or system architecture, this framework is basically our gold standard. It gives us a structured, visual way to see the end-to-end journey of our digital assets. It moves us away from this messy, ad hoc storage mindset toward a standardized, totally predictable model. Now, the whole point, the primary goal of this framework, is to help organizations intentionally consider and effectively manage every single phase of that lifespan. Because, let's face it, when data is left unmanaged, it turns into pure chaos. It fragments across servers, it inflates storage costs like crazy, and honestly, most importantly, it becomes a massive security liability. This framework is here so that your data's journey isn't just left up to chance or some legacy default setting somebody forgot about. By recognizing that information has a definitive life cycle, an enterprise can finally transition from, basically just passively hoarding files to active strategic data management. Okay, let's get into the mechanics. The text breaks this life cycle down into a super clean 4-step chronological process. Data is first created, then stored, used, and ultimately destroyed. Now, those first 3 stages, creation, storage, usage, that's where companies spend, 99% of their time and budget. But it's that 4th stage, destruction, that is almost always overlooked. And that's a huge mistake. Deletion is a concrete, absolutely necessary phase of the life cycle. Holding on to outdated or redundant data, it doesn't just burn through money. It actively increases your attack surface for breaches and makes compliance audits an absolute nightmare. Bucketing data into these 4 distinct stages forces us to prioritize that final, critical phase of deliberate destruction. Now, you might be wondering, why is mapping out these 4 stages so incredibly critical right now? Well, it all comes down to the sheer, mind-boggling scale of modern business. We're talking about increasingly greater volumes of data being processed every single second. The modern organization is basically a relentless data-generating machine. And when you're dealing with these massive, scaling volumes of information spread across distributed networks, the cracks in a passive management system, they're going to expose themselves real quick, and often with some pretty severe operational consequences. The source text actually hits the nail on the head regarding this issue of scale. It notes that, quote, as an organization grows and handles increasingly greater volumes of data, end quote, there is a direct, undeniable correlation here. You literally cannot have organizational growth without a parallel explosion in the volume of data you're handling. The two are permanently linked. More clients, more distributed teams, more automated transactions, it all equals a massive influx of information that has to be strategically created, stored, used, and, eventually securely destroyed. And that brings us to the big takeaway from our source material today. Because of this massive influx of information, the importance of truly mastering this lifecycle framework increases right alongside the organization's growth. Simply put, growth demands understanding. If your business is scaling, your grasp on this framework absolutely has to scale with it. You just can't run a complex, growing enterprise using the data management habits of a tiny startup. The larger the volume of data, the more vital it becomes to intentionally manage exactly how that data is born, how it's utilized, and how it is ultimately put to rest. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really chew on. Take a look at your own architecture, your own enterprise. As your organization scales up and handles these increasingly greater volumes of data, are you actively managing it? Like, are you truly utilizing this framework to guide your information from its initial generation all the way through its useful life to its inevitable, secure destruction? Or are you just deploying storage and crossing your fingers? Taking control of the data lifecycle isn't just some IT housekeeping chore. It's a fundamental strategic requirement for a healthy, growing organization. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and I really hope this helps you look at your infrastructure in a completely new light.